Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. All right, today I'm going to be painting Getting into the Holiday Spirit, and I will be doing that while I'm sipping as well, while I'm sipping eggnog. We're getting into the holiday spirit on our canvas and in our cup today. And I hope that if you enjoyed this painting, that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you'll find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. All right, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, fire red, cobalt blue, Mars black. This is burnt umber, which I'll call brown, purple violet, deep yellow, and fluorescent green. And of course you can switch up those colors if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have 3 brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush, I have a number 6 round brush, and I have a number 0 round brush, and I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. Again, you can switch those up a little bit if you'd like. And if you're painting along with me, you're probably going to want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying them. And down below there's a video. I am going to provide you with a couple of additional resources. One of them is a link where you could purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the brushes and the paint and all that good stuff. So that's there for you. There is also a link where you could download an image of the final painting, and that's for free. You can just print it and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. All right, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're painting our sky. We're going to use our large bristle brush, and we're going to be using black, blue, and white. And I'm going to bring my sky about 2/3 of the way down my canvas. So to know how far that is, if you kind of visually pick where your halfway point is, and then pick where, maybe my halfway is a little bit lower than that, pick where your quarter way is, it's somewhere in the middle of there. I'm just going to kind of make myself a little bit of a marker. I'll use my brush as a measuring tool on one side, and then go to the other side and make myself another marker. You could connect these at this point, but I'm not going to, because I want my line to kind of be wobbly as I go and a little bit lighter. So I'm just going to mark those 2 dots. That'll tell me how far down to go. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up black and blue on my brush at the same time. The type of sky that I'm going for is a really kind of dark morning kind of sky, where the tops of these snow trees have been they're being illuminated by the sun that's coming up somewhere else where that we're not going to see, and they're just being, I don't know, kissed by the morning light that's coming from somewhere else, but it's cloudy here. So I've seen this happen a couple of times, and in real life, and it's just super cool when it happens. So I'm attempting to do that in this nice quick painting. So it's almost going to look kind of like a night sky until we put the bright white snow on the top of the trees, and then that'll turn it into like a morning sky that has kind of been covered by some clouds and stuff. And it really is cool with our trees because it makes them pop out really nice and well. So I keep on kind of picking up black and blue right now as I'm traveling down my canvas. I want it to get lighter and lighter as it goes towards that horizon. So right now I'm going to start to pick up just a touch of white, not much. I still want it kind of on the darker side. So I just want to, be mindful that I don't go too white. I'm just using a left to right brush stroke. I'm getting these colors to really blend nicely together, so it's a nice gradual blend as it comes down my canvas. And I don't want it too blue, so that's why I am using the black and white in there also a little bit, so it turns it more of a desaturated blue, so more of like you're in essence kind of adding gray to your blue, and that will help it become not so vibrant. You could also add a little bit of brown to it if you wanted to, but I'm just using the black, blue, and white. And again, as I come down towards my horizon, I'm using a little bit more white, so my sky is going to go just a touch lighter and lighter as it gets down towards that horizon. I don't want it to go all the way white, but I definitely want it to go a little bit lighter than it is right now. So just kind of tweaking my colors as I go, make sure I've got them in the right value that I want, and then I'm almost done here. I still got some nice like grayish blue that I'm working with right now, and I just added a touch more white to my brush. Get this just a little bit lighter down here at the horizon line. And then we are going to use the same brush for the next step. So once you've got your sky all nice and painted on here, you can actually just, I'm going to bring this down just a little bit further here. And in a messy way, you can see I've got a messy kind of horizon line there. And sometimes when I'm right before I want to finish here, I just kind of make sure that I've got a nice blend going on, a nice even coat, and that's looking pretty good to me. So I am going to wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first layer to our ground. I'm going to be using my large brush, and the main color I'm going to be using is brown, but I might also use a little bit of blue and white. I just really want it to look dirty. It's going to be the undercoat for my snow. So I'm going to start with some brown paint. I'm going to go just maybe to the bottom of where your uneven kind of sky ends. And I'm going to make myself an uneven line going left to right, just a little bit below that one. And then I want it to meet my sky, so I'm going to do some dots up into the sky. Just a little bit, just so these two colors kind of blend together. It gives me some sort of semblance of what I can work with when I go to do my snow and my trees later. And you can see I'm giving it an uneven top. I did the left to the right down at the bottom, so that way when it goes to meet the water, it'll have a little bit smoother of a transition. And then we're going to use this same brush for the next step. Yeah, I just used brown, and if you went through some wet paint from your sky, that's okay. Just work them on in together. As long as you can kind of see some sort of difference between the two, that works out well. And we're going to wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting our water. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and I'm going to be using the same colors that I used in the sky, which are black, blue, and white. And this time I'm going to kind of do it from the bottom up. The bottom is going to be the dark, and the top's going to be the light, just to represent a reflection of the sky. So I'm going to start with black and blue on my brush. I'm going to go left to right, starting at the bottom. And of course, you don't have as much space to go or as much real estate to cover in through here. So you want to start transitioning into your blue a little bit quicker than you did up here, or into your lighter colors a little bit quicker than you did up in the sky. That way you don't end up with that super dark color up at the top by the land. And then again, I'm just going left to right. This doesn't necessarily have to be as smooth as your sky was, because it's water. It's going to have lots of reflections and stuff on it, and it could in essence be a little ripply if you wanted it to be. So feel free to make yours as smooth or as not smooth as you want, but if you can get it a little bit lighter as it goes right up towards that land, that would be great. And then I'm just using that little left to right brush stroke to get it to meet that brown area. And then we are going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your water all nice and painted in, you can wash and dry. There we go. Wash and dry this big brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are doing the first layer of our tree tops and their reflections. I do want to forewarn you though that before we start this step that you dry your canvas or make sure that your canvas is dry. So you can either, take an extra long break if you'd like to, or you can blow on it, which will be your longest way to do it, or you can take out a blow dryer and just blow dry it. So whatever way is most convenient. Maybe yours is already dry by now, but I definitely would suggest making sure that the whole thing is dry before this step. So again, we'll use our large bristle brush. The colors that we're going to be using are brown, purple, and white. And I will be using those colors kind of in an arbitrary alternating type fashion. I'm not going to use a ton of white because I don't want this under layer to be really bright, but I do need to use the white a little bit so the colors, the purple and the brown, are not super see-through. So I'm going to have mine just, I don't know, like maple kind of trees, big kind of poofy tops to them. They're going to have snow. The colors that we're doing, there's not really many leaves left on them because it's winter time, but this is going to kind of represent the snow that's on top of them. And then I might have a couple over here, but I want one big one that's a little off center. So I'm going to leave some space between the bottoms of my trees and my land for these ones over here. And then I think I'm going to have a big clump of them over here that's going to meet the land. But you'll see how I'm going to do this. So right now I'm going to pick up a little bit of purple, a little bit of brown, and just a teeny tiny touch of white. I don't need a lot. And I'm not going to pre-mix the colors. I'm just going to kind of arbitrarily pick them up because I want some brown spots and some lavender spots. So I'm going to start with my big tree. I'm going to have this one somewhere in this vicinity. I definitely want it to not be really systematic. So I want to have maybe some little branches poking out. And again, this is just kind of the undercoat to it, so it doesn't have to be super perfect. I want to leave area where I'm going to have my trunk showing in a little bit. So this is just kind of providing me. My canvas is really loud today. We'll just hold on to it. Maybe it'll quiet as I go along here. But you can see I just am kind of dotting in a nice soft shape. The purple's going to give it some real cool tones, cool shadows for winter time. You can have it as big or as little as you want, but I think that's looking pretty good for me on that tree. Then I think I'm going to have a couple others over on the right hand side. Maybe these are going to be a little bit smaller. It's okay if your trees kind of touch one another. If you want them to, that's totally fine. Just keep in your head which one you're going to want to have in front of the other one. So when we do get to put that brighter snow on later, you'll understand in your own head what you want to do with that. And again, right now I've got purple with a tiny bit of white on my brush. I am not washing my brush, so that way I've got some browner spots, some more purpley spots, some lighter spots. I don't need it, again, to be super duper light, but if you want to, every now and again, pop in a touch of the white. That's going to help to make some of those spots not so see-through. But again, we're going to be putting the snow on later, which will help that process as well. And then I think I'm going to have a little baby one over on this left-hand side here, so maybe something in through here. And again, doesn't have to be anything super perfect. I'm just kind of free-forming where I want these to be. And then I think I'm going to have a whole maybe big area of foliage and maybe some different layers of trees in through here. So maybe I'll go a little bit lighter here so you can kind of see what's in my little pea brain here. And then we'll make it even lighter later, but this is just so you guys can kind of see what I'm headed for here, and then maybe some little darkness in through here, maybe a little more purple on my brush. And again, once we put our snow on these later, it'll make more sense. You can certainly still see some peekaboo spots behind these, which is super cool. But now that we've got the tops in place, now we've got to give it some kind of reflection with these same colors. The reflection will be built over time. So I'm just going to kind of start over here. I know that this one is going to take up most of the area in my water over here. So I'm going to just pick up a little bit of purple now, maybe a touch of white as I go a little bit higher. Nothing fancy. I'm just using a little left to right brush stroke just to carry these colors down into the water. I've got this little guy here, so I know that that's going to be somewhere in here. And again, we don't have as much space down below, so you don't want to lose sight of the kind of the size of it. This one's probably going to go right off of the canvas, and I've got a lot of brown in it, so I'm going to just kind of keep it in a similar width. I'm not covering up all of my water. I just want to make sure that I've got some of these colors represented down here. I think I want a little bit more lightness down at the bottom just to tell the story of those lighter pieces up there. Then I have this one, and again, this one's a little bit taller than this one, so when I go to do the shadow, I can bring it down a little bit further into the water. And I'm going to keep it a similar width, so that way you definitely won't be confused as to which tree it is in fact reflecting. And we've got this one, and it's just about down the same level at the bottom, and then we got this one over here which has a touch more purple and white in it, but it still seems like it's a similar size. And then we are going to be switching to our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your first layer of your treetops on here, you can put this large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are doing tree trunks, branches, and their reflections. So we're going to be using our small brush, and the colors that I'm using are black, brown, white, and maybe a little bit of yellow if I'm feeling like I want an extra bright highlight. So these are just meant to be, you know, kind of in the shadows. I want there to be a couple little branches poking through the trees a little bit. So you can really have as many on here as you want or as few as you want. It's totally up to you. I'm going to start with some black and brown on my brush to start. That's how I'm going to do them all, is just black and brown to start, and then I'll come back through and add a little bit of highlights and stuff. So for me, when I'm doing my tree trunks, I definitely like them to be a little bit wider at the base and then get more narrow as it goes up the tree. So just a little bit wider at the base. And then as I'm doing these branches inside the tree, I'm just going to kind of skip about. I don't necessarily need to see a full branch in through here. I'm really just kind of wanting to give the impression that there's little branches throughout the tree. So you can certainly have fun with however you want to do that, but that's how I'm going to tackle it. And then I'm going to go ahead and tackle each tree in a similar manner. I'm just bringing most of them to the top of my land. I think the main tree here I might bring in a little bit further, but for the most part, I'm going to just bring them to the edge of the land. And you know, you can have fun branches that kind of stick out. You can have whatever kind of branch formation makes you happy. I definitely love the more wild side of nature, so you'll see that when I do my tree trunks and branches and stuff like that. I always have a couple of crazy branches that just stick out in the middle of nowhere, and you know, you kind of wonder what they're doing there, but they seem to always make sense to me because when I look outside, I have lots of trees and they just all have their own kind of shapes and stuff to them. So I just know that every tree looks different in its own right. I think I'm going to bring this one again, maybe a little bit into my land. And I'm not really concerned what it looks like as it's hitting the land because I know that I'm going to be having a bunch of snow at the bottom later. So I'm not terribly concerned as to how awesome it looks when it hits the ground. So you can see I'm just kind of free-forming this, making it fork a couple of times, this particular one, because it's got a lot of space underneath it. And then I'm just kind of making some smaller branches throughout the tree. And again, I'm just kind of skipping my brush here and there to get these little, almost like little peekaboo spots of branches throughout the remainder part of the tree. And when we go to put the snow on later, these little branches, we'll keep a couple of them poking through, so that will make it look really nice and kind of authentic. And then I've just got this little one over here. So again, just going to kind of give it a little bit of shape at the bottom and then fork it as much as I want. Maybe put a little bit more brown on my brush and just skip a couple of branches up through the middle of that tree and the exterior. Over here, I know that I'm going to have maybe a bush down here. So I think I'm going to have some tree trunks just kind of popping up in this vicinity. That'll be above this little front bush part. And again, these will make a lot more sense once we put the snow and stuff on, and maybe a couple little pokey ones up and through here. You know, just have fun with it. Put them wherever you want. And if you put one that you're like, ooh, I don't really like that one, don't worry, you can put some snow over it later. And then I'm going to come down and put a little bit of highlights on any of the ones that I feel might want a little bit of highlight. And by highlight, I'm really kind of just in my head saying bark. I want there to look like there's a little bit of bark. So I just put a little bit of brown and white on my brush. And I'm really just kind of wiggling in some light spots here and there. I didn't wash my brush. I just put a little bit of brown and white. And I'm not really concerned about too many light spots up in the tree itself, the head of the tree, because I know that I'm going to have a ton of snow up there anyways. So I'm doing my little highlights. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down and do a very loose interpretive reflection down in the water. So I'm just wiping my brush off on my paper towel to make sure I don't have too much white on it. And I'm just going to pick up that black and brown again. And the only trick here is just make sure you go directly below it. I'm going to start at kind of about the same width of the base of that tree. And then if you can fork a little bit to just kind of give the impression that it is the same tree, awesome. But if that doesn't work out perfectly for you, don't worry about it. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect. We are going to be doing more to the reflection later when we do the snow. So again, it doesn't have to be a perfect reflection. You just want something that resembles that particular tree. So again, I'm going directly below it. I see that this forks out. Sometimes going in the opposite direction is really difficult for our brains to comprehend and to kind of get our hand to do something that's opposite that we see up top. So again, if yours doesn't work out exactly, don't fret about it because you'll be able to disguise it with the snow and stuff later. So again, just directly below, something like this. And then I've got a little fork happening here. And sometimes if you add a touch of water to your paint, that will help you to get these little skinnier lines too. I've got a little fork somewhere in through here. And again, I'm not really concerned about it being super perfect, just maybe along that edge where it really is just directly below. That's probably the most important part to at least get in the right vicinity. And then if you have a little bit of an angle, great. And then I think I just have a couple of little ones over here, something like that, and then maybe up here, which you're not even going to be able to see. And then if you did have a prominent little highlights, you can just kind of wiggle it in there, wiggle it just a little bit. Something like that and like that. And that's all I'm going to do for those. So we are going to use our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your tree trunks and your branches and their reflections, you can take out your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are putting the shadow underneath our land. So I'm going to be using my medium brush, and I'm going to be using black and brown paint, and I have them both on my brush at the same time. I'm just picking up a little bit of black and a little bit of brown. And really, all I'm going to do is, in a messy fashion, I'm going to underline my land. So this way, it's going to give me the impression that this land kind of has a little bit of a height to it before it hits the water, and it is just casting a little bit of reflection or shadow. So you could refer to it as either or. It could be the shadow or it could be a reflection. I guess I'm kind of thinking it more as a shadow because I'm using it as a darker color. If it was a reflection, you'd see some of the snow color. So shadow it is. And then when we get done with this brush, we are going to be using our large brush for the next step. So you can see I'm just kind of free-forming this along the edge, and then I'm just kind of getting it to blend into that water a little bit. And then I will be putting this brush away. I'm going to take out my large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are putting the snow on our ground. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush, and I'm going to be using white paint only. So how I'm going to do this is I'm not going to use a lot of paint on my brush, but what I'm going to attempt to do is get heavier spots of white near the top of my land, and then I'll almost take my brush and rub it out in like a dry brush kind of technique to get snow on the rest of the ground. That way I have some bright spots and some not so bright spots, and it looks more dimensional. So I have some white on my brush right now, and I'm just going to kind of loosely give myself some brighter areas at the top or the bottoms, the top of your land, and maybe the bottoms of some of your trees. So something like this. And it doesn't have to be an even go across in a nice perfect line. It's meant to look like it's snow and it's been piled up in the forest and all that good stuff. So now that I've got it at the top, now without washing my brush, I'm just going to use the remnants on my brush to rub in the rest of the area. And you can see it still remains lighter at the top, and it's getting a darker color down towards the bottom area. And you can certainly add more if you want to. If you find that once you've got this on there, you're like, oh, I think I want like a full-on pile in through here. Then feel free to dab in some more heavier white paint. Or, if you want there to look like there's a little trail or something, feel free to modify it. But that's how I easily get those brighter parts of snow and the darker parts without much effort. You just kind of put that heavier snow on there and then rub it out into the areas that you don't want it to be as bright. And then we're going to use this large brush for the next step. You don't even have to wash it, so you can just take a break and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are putting snow on our treetops, and then we'll carry it into the reflection as well. So I have my white that's already on my brush. I, again, don't recommend that you pick up a huge amount of white paint and just start dabbing away. I will be using a dotting technique, but my goal here is to have kind of the tops of my trees have the most snow on them, or the lightest areas, and then have it a little bit darker as it gets down towards the bottom. So all that means is less dots as you get down towards the bottom. And I still want to be able to see some of my tree branches and some of these darker colors that I put under there, because I put them for a reason. I wanted there to be dimension in the tree, so I don't want to cover up all of that white or the undercoat there. So I'm going to just kind of start with this tree so you can kind of see where my thoughts are, and I'm just going to kind of start dotting on here. I'm being mindful of where my little branches are, so that way it's kind of giving me a roadmap as to where I can put these little clusters of snow. And I'm running out of paint right now, and I'm doing that on purpose, because when I run out of paint, that means that it's going to be softer and not as vibrant, and the snow isn't going to be as thick, so I'll be able to see some of those darker colors underneath it. And then if I want that some of those tippy tops to be a little bit brighter, I can always just pick up a little bit more white and add a couple pops of the even brighter stuff at the top. So feel free to kind of tweak that as you want to, but again, I'm kind of putting some of the brightest areas at the top and then letting it go a little bit darker as it comes down the tree. So again, I'll do the same thing in through here, and I'm doing kind of little pockets of the snow clusters, just so it's not, again, all covering my entire tree. I'm leaving some of my branches showing through, so that keeps that little authenticity of it. Maybe you can even put branches where you didn't have them initially. If you feel like you want some more length over on one side or the other side, feel free to just kind of bring some down in those vicinities. And then if you want it to look softer, you can always just wipe your brush off on your paper towel and just use those very little tiny bits of remnants on there, and that will help to make it look a little bit softer. You could always bring some of the purple or the brown back if you wanted to, if you felt like you wanted to have a little bit more color in there. And then I'm just going to kind of go ahead and do these other trees, get a couple of really vibrant areas in through there, being mindful of my little branches that I don't want to cover all of them up because I think they're super cool. Ooh, I guess this tree is going to just go right off of my canvas here. Do a little bit down in through here, and I'm hardly touching. When I want these softer or more muted areas, I'm hardly touching with my brush, especially even when I don't have a lot of paint on my brush. That's really going to allow me to get these variations in the value to the snow. So you can have the brighter spots and the darker spots. And now I'm going to go over here to this little guy over here, making sure I don't have too much paint on my brush. So I'm just wiping it off on my paper towel. And if you want those fluffy edges, just again, don't have a lot of paint on your brush, and just kind of right now I'm hardly tapping my canvas at all to give it these little speckly marks. And then if I want some heavier areas, I can press a little bit harder, and that helps to do that. That's looking pretty good. And then I've got this area over here. It's probably the trickiest, because I want there to look like there's different layers or levels of foliage. So I'm going to have a little bush down in through here. So that's where the heaviest stuff is at the top. And then I think I want to have a couple of trees in through here. So again, you don't have to dot the whole thing, just giving the illusion or the impression that that's, the top of a tree does just fine. And maybe I've got another tippy top over here. And just because I'm using the brightest at the top, that's telling the viewer on every tree, that's the top of that tree. So if I'm doing a couple of trees right next to each other, you can see the difference just because I've told you the brightest is at the top, and you can visually see that. And then I think I want to have a little faint snow on these little ones back here. And then I'll put a little bit in that reflection. So again, I'm just going to kind of follow what I see, and I'm going to be rubbing left to right. So a little rub left to right, and it doesn't have to be smooth. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just something that gives the impression of a reflection kind of in a similar way that you see above it. So this is going to be here. And again, hardly any paint on my brush. If the left side is lighter, I'll put a little bit more white on that left side of my reflection. And then I'm going to go, this one, I think the top of the tree is going to be off of my canvas. So I'm just going to kind of put a little bit of, which is the lightest area. So I'm going to be mindful of that, and then just kind of put some of these down in through here. This is looking pretty good. It's looking like a nice winter wonderland, a nice winter landscape on a lake somewhere. Oops, that was a lot of paint on my brush. I didn't wipe it off on my paper towel first. I was so interested in looking at the painting, I wasn't even watching what I was doing. So then we just kind of rub this out. So that's going to make for a good bright spot up here on this tree. That's how we correct that. I can't take it away from there, but I can certainly add more up here. There we go. And then I just have that one little tree left to go on the right hand side. This one over here. And then we are going to be using, we're going to use the same brush for the next step. So once you've got your snow on your trees and your little reflections in your water, you can wash and dry this big brush. There we go. And get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are putting on our canvas. So we're going to use our large brush and we're going to use just white paint. So we're going to make a series of 4 dots, and then I'll show you how to connect those dots. And we're really just going for something soft here, something to give the illusion that this is a canvas that is kind of popped out a little bit from this canvas. So I'm going to take my large brush and I have white paint on it. So for me, I want to position my canvas so this is my focal tree. So you will probably not be centered. You'll probably be a little to the left or a little to the right. So I know that I don't want to hide this tree either. So I need to have the edge of my canvas to the left or to the right of this trunk here. So I think I'm going to pull mine to the right just a little bit, because I think that will almost clear the corner of here. So I'm just going to kind of visually go up from here, and I'm going to be about 2 to 3 inches away from the top of my canvas, or maybe about a 1/2 of an inch to an inch above the top of this tree. So maybe I need to be a little bit higher, something like this. I'm going to make myself a dot. So once I have that dot there, I'm going to take my brush and use it as a measuring tool. I'm going to put my finger, wherever this dot is, so something like this. And then I'm going to come down into my water about 1.5 inches to 2 inches below my landline. I need enough room below this to have the bottom of the easel, so you don't want to go too low. So maybe about 1 inch to 2 inches below here. So I need to remeasure because my finger has moved while I was talking. And oh, that's pretty perfect right there. So I'm going to make myself a second dot right in through there. So now I need 2 more dots on the right hand side. So again, you want to just figure out how far over to the right that you want to go. And I really want this whole tree in here. So I think I'm going to move it a little bit to the right of this tree here and come up wherever you want it, and then just measure this one to see how far down you came, and go the same way over here, something like that. And then you can just come directly down and go, of course, the same height away from the canvas from here, somewhere in, sorry, I know my head's getting in the way, something like that. You could also use your brush as a measuring tool to see how far away from the edge of your canvas is. And that's looking pretty good to me, maybe a little smudge to the right. So you just kind of want 4 dots forming a rectangle. Once you have those 4 dots with your white paint, I draw a line, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to rub in the white paint into the interior of the canvas. So I do it pretty fast so my paint stays wet while I'm doing it. So I've got this to here, and when I'm drawing my line, I'm keeping my eye on the prize, which is the other dot So that's the way I'm going to do it that way. I'm reloading my brush. I'm keeping my eye on the prize, which is the other dot. Keeping my eye on the prize, which is the other dot. And you can always readjust them in a minute. I'm just kind of going fast so I can get the lines on here. Something like that. And then I've got this one like this. And if you do this and you're like, oh my God, I have way too much white paint on my canvas, don't panic, because your canvas should have been dry before you started this step anyways. And then you could use a little bit of water to soften it. And then I'm just going to rub the paint so it gives this almost like a soft faded look into the middle of my canvas. And this is meant to look like it's a painted canvas, so even if you've had firm lines and not these soft edges like I have, that would look super cool too. Like you only had part of the canvas painted, you could have splotches of white still remaining on this inside thing, and that would look super cool too. And then once we've got this step done, we are going to be switching to our medium brush. So you can, sit and finagle your edges all you want. Make sure that you've got them as straight as you want them to be. But again, they don't have to be perfect, because, this is an artistic expression kind of painting. But once you've got them the way that you want them, you can put this large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are putting the base coat on the easel. We're going to be using our medium brush, and the colors I'm using are brown, yellow, white, and red. So I just want this to look like wood, and I know it might be a little bit see-through when I go to do this, so I'm going to use a little bit of white to help me out there. And I want there to be maybe like a little rusty orangey color too. So I'm going to use a little bit of my orange or my yellow and red to pre-mix myself like a little orange color that I can kind of use with my brown. So I'm going to pick up brown, my little orangey color, and a touch of white all at the same time on my brush. I'm going to just do a horizontal line at the bottom of my canvas. This will help me straighten my line too. So what I'm going to do, and when I do it, I'm going to overhang it a little bit on each side. I'm going to have it pretty wide, so I'm going to push my brush pretty hard, something like this. I need a reload, just was running out of paint there. And every time you reload, you can reload with a different kind of combination of those colors, and it'll look even more like wood. And we do have another step that we're going to be doing to this easel, so if it doesn't come out perfect on this step, don't worry, you've got another step where we'll be doing some final details. I'm going to make a little lip over here so my canvas has somewhere to sit in, so it's not just resting, standing on top of that. So I'm going to put a little lip over here and over there. And then I need some legs. So I'm going to just do 2 diagonal legs, maybe a couple of inches away from the right hand edge, and just going to kind of go down at a diagonal direction. Again, I'm not terribly concerned about it being perfect right now because I know I've got that future step, but I do want these two to kind of look similar to one another. So something like this. And again, they're not perfect. That's okay. We're just going for a fun painterly kind of fun painting here. I was going to say interpretation, but this is totally out of our heads. Something like that. And then I need a topper to hold my canvas on at the top. So I'm going to go straight up from the middle of these or just into the middle of the canvas. I'm going to be putting just a kind of a rectangle type shape. I think I need a little bit more lighter paint on my brush here so we can all see it. So just a little vertical rectangle in through here. And then I'm going to do a horizontal rectangle that in essence kind of holds my canvas from flying away. So if you've ever painted outside, you know that wind becomes quite the challenging element to deal with. So a lot of easels will have this little clampy thing at the top of them that will hold your canvas down. So again, I can see through my paint right now, so you might be able to as well. Don't worry about it. Again, we will have that second step in a little bit that's going to put those final details on there that will get it to not be so see-through. And then we are going to be using let's use this same brush for the next, no, let's use our small brush for the next step. So put your medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what I'm going to do for the next step is I'm adding the shadow on my easel. I'm going to be using my small brush, and I'm going to be using black paint. So I am going to be considering my light source is going to be up to the left, somewhere up here, top left. So that means that all of my shadows will be at the bottom and to the right. So I'm just going to use black paint. I'm going to be just creating these lines. I'm really not doing anything fancy other than just creating a line. And again, this is one of those steps that can really help to clean up your edges if you want to. So I'm going to do it there. Then I'm going to do one over here. I have a super shaky hand, so when I'm doing these kind of lines, I definitely am bracing myself with using like my pinky as a brace on my easel or on the canvas. I'm going to go over here, put a shadow on that right. I'll even put a little shadow in through here to make that look like it's casting a shadow on the actual easel part itself. And then I'm going to put a shadow all the way down this bottom. And again, you can certainly, if you, depending on your brush, if your brush holds a lot of paint or not, you could certainly add a touch of water to your black paint. That's going to allow you to have a nice fluid line. So as you're doing these smaller lines, you can certainly utilize the water to help you to make it a little bit more fluid. I'm going to do the top here as well. So I'm going to go bottom and the right side of these pieces. Something like that. I think I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow at the bottom of this piece. We're going to put a highlight there too in a minute, but I'm going to actually, I said I was just going to use black, but I'm going to use a little brown too. So I'm going to put a tiny shadow at the bottom of this piece, just so it gives it a little bit more dimension. And then I'm actually going to put a shadow on the side of my canvas as well, because I think that's gonna make this pop out too. So I'm going to use black and brown, and I'm just going to go down the right hand side of my canvas, my painted canvas. The portrait that we're painting in the middle, the landscape that we're painting in the middle. And again, this could certainly help to clean up any lines, but I like how it's making it separate from the actual landscape behind it. My words are going to get really confusing if I start talking about these two things. And then we are going to be, let's see, what are we going to, oh, let's use this same brush for the next step. So we've got our shadows on our canvas and our easel, and then we'll use this same brush for the next step, so you can just wash it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are going to finish our easel by putting highlights on it, and if we need to in any area, you can do a second coat as well. So I'm going to use my small brush. I'm going to be using white, yellow, brown, and maybe a little bit of that red too, to do like an orangey color. But I'm going to start with white, yellow, and brown on my brush at the same time. And I'm going to just kind of do a loose kind of line at the top, because I know that most easels are not super clean and they're usually like bumpy and stuff at the top. You could probably just look at mine as an example. You could even put like little paint splotches and stuff all over it if you really wanted to be creative. But I'm just going to kind of do a loose highlight at the top of there, and then I'll do the same thing on the legs here on the left hand side. I'll put more of a highlight there on the left hand side, and then I'll pick up a little bit of my brown just to make sure that I've got enough coverage on those pieces of wood. And then on the top portion up here, I'll do the same thing. So I'm going to use yellow, white, maybe a little bit of that orangey kind of color to highlight the top portion of this. I think I want more of that orangey color. Highlight the top portion. Ooh, maybe a little white too. I keep adjusting. As soon as I see it on my canvas, I'm like, ooh, I want it brighter than that. And the left, and then just make sure I've got enough coverage so you can't see through it. So maybe a little bit more brown down at this bottom part. And then I'll do the same thing up on that little tippy top part. So a little bit of that orangey, peachy concoction that I made, something like that. And then maybe just a little bit of brown. It's meant, again, to look like wood. So you can really have it whatever streakiness that you want. You can have little pops of highlights wherever you want them to be. Maybe a little snow has accumulated on your easel at this point during your painting adventure out in the wilderness. And then we're going to use our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your easel all nice and finished, you can wash and dry your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so this is going to be the funnest step, at least in my professional opinion. We're going to make this into the holiday painting that we've dreamed it was going to be. So the center area, we're adding all of our holiday lights onto it. So I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are red, green, yellow, and white. And I will be dotting my lights into the tree, and then I'm going to be rubbing a little bit of that glow onto the snow. And then if you did have any of this tree within your canvas area at the bottom here, you'd want to pull some of those colors into a little bit of a reflection there too. So I'm going to start with red paint on my brush. And so this really reads as being we're holidaying it up. I'm going to do like strands of lights, and I'm going to be doing big kind of dots so you can really see them from a far away place. And you can have, I just want them to kind of be saggy, I guess, so they look like, you know, that gravity is taking over. And you can have yours whatever way you want. You can, you know, make up some areas that you want these to be. You can put them all connecting to one another. You can make them appear as if they're going all the way across the tree. You know, just have fun with this. I'm gonna just really embrace the holiday spirit and get a lot of lights on my imaginary tree that I have painted out in the wilderness. Because, you know, all those creatures out in the wilderness, I'm sure they would appreciate a very nicely decorated tree within their woodland areas. As I'm going over into this part here, I think I might just kind of trail off a couple of these as they go into that the white area of my canvas. And let's see, maybe I'll have a little row down here to go to that light. Maybe I'll have one here. Oh, this is fun. This is a fun step here. Just again, I'm going to try and make sure that they have that sag to them. That looks nice. And then I think I'm going to, do I want any more up there? I don't think so. I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel because I don't want the glow in the ground to be super duper powerful. So I just wiped my brush off, and I'm just really putting just little tiny bits of the red down here. Nothing bold, just a little tiny glow. And then I'm going to wash my brush and move on to the next color. So I think my next color I'm going to do is my green. So I have a bunch of green on my brush, and I'm just going to kind of follow suit in the same, I'm almost going to make like little rows of these colors. So you could follow the same pattern of the color before, or you could put them in a different place. You know, you could have them kind of crisscrossing over one another. It's totally up to you. This is your holiday imaginative tree that you have created looking at a landscape that doesn't actually have one of these in it. So you can really, maybe yours has blue lights, maybe yours has, I don't know, pink lights or purple lights. You have purple on your palette if you're following my color scheme, so maybe you make some purple ones. That would look pretty cool. But again, it's your tree. You make it look as festive as you want. Maybe you even put a star at the top of it, or maybe you put lights around your easel. Like you could have lights all hanging around your easel, so you can certainly decorate this and everything around it as much as you want to. So now that I've got that, I'm going to wipe off my brush on my paper towel and then just rub in a little bit of that green into the snow below, and then I'm going to wash and dry my brush and pick up a whole bunch of yellow on my brush. That's going to be my next color here. So I've got a bunch of yellow on my brush, and I think I'm going to put the yellow row above the red row, so something like that. I am using thick paint because I know that this paint can be see-through, so for me, by using these thick dots, it kind of ensures that the vibrancy will remain. You could always use a little bit of white within your mixture, especially with the yellow. If your yellows are really see-through, I've got a green dot here that's a very heavy green dot. I just took care of it though. Now these are yellow green dots, but you could certainly use a little bit of white within your yellow paint. That will help it to make it less see-through. I am going to be using white in a minute for like some additional sparkle dots, but you could certainly, if you wanted your yellow to be more vibrant, or even your green, or if any of your colors were just not popping the way that you want them to, you can certainly add a little bit of white to them, almost like a pre-mixed kind of color if you wanted to. And then once I've got this done, I'm going to put a little yellow in my snow, but I'm going to be careful not to put too much yellow in my snow. We don't want people to think that it's something else in the snow. So something like that. I feel like I want one across here too. No, this works. All right, so then I'm going to wipe my brush off, and then I'm going to add a little bit of the yellow within the snow, and then I'm going to wash and dry and pick up some white. So the white is going to be, I'm going to call it like my sparkle dots all over my tree. So you could think of it as snow, you could think of it as little sparkle dots, whatever you want to consider these little white dots to be. They're just adding that extra bit of twinkle for me, but you could certainly, you know, think of them as something else if you wanted to. You can put them in between, you can put them on top, you could, you know, feel free to put them wherever you want. And then once you have all of your beautiful holiday lights on your tree, we're going to use the small brush for the next step, so you can wash and dry. I think I want another red dot here, sorry. You can wash and dry your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of any painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right corner, but I think I'm going to be wild and crazy on this one. And I'm going to sign it in this canvas. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right corner. So I think I'm going to sign this in the bottom left. I'm going to do it really tiny. I'm using my small brush. I'm going to use black paint, and you could certainly use whatever color you want. You could, I'm using my initials. You could sign yours with your first name or your date or a symbol or whatever you'd like. That looks cute. Okay, and that's going to do it. So I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a really kind of neat and artistically thought out painting, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.